Trifles. First performed by the Provincetown Players at the Wharf Theatre, Provincetown, Mass., August 8, 1916. George Henderson, County Attorney. Henry P.T.R.S., Sheriff. Lewis Hale, a neighboring farmer. Mrs. P.T.R.S. Mrs. Hale. Scene: the kitchen is the now abandoned farmhouse of John Wright, a gloomy kitchen, and left without having been put in order unwashed pans under the sink, a loaf of bread outside the bread box, a dish towel on the table, other signs of incompleted work. At the rear, the outer door opens, and the sheriff comes in, followed by the county attorney and Hale. The sheriff and Hale are men in middle life. The county attorney is a young man. All are much bundled up and go at once to the stove. They are followed by the two women. The sheriff's wife first. She is a slight, wiry woman, a thin, nervous face. Mrs. Hale is larger and would ordinarily be called more comfortable looking, but she is disturbed now and looks fearfully about as she enters. The women have come in slowly and stand close together near the door. County attorney, rubbing his hands, this feels good. Come up to the fire, ladies. Mrs. P.T.R.S. After taking a step forward, I'm not cold. Sheriff, unbuttoning his overcoat and stepping away from the stove as if to mark the beginning of official business. Now, Mr. Hale, before we move things about, you explain to Mr. Henderson just what you saw when you came here yesterday morning. County attorney, by the way, has anything been moved? Are things just as you left them yesterday? Sheriff, looking about, it's just the same. When it dropped below 0 last night, I thought I'd better send Frank out this morning to make a fire for us. No use getting pneumonia with a big case on. But I told him not to touch anything except the stove end, you know, Frank. County attorney, somebody should have been left here yesterday. Sheriff, oh, yesterday. When I had to send Frank to Morris Center for that man who went crazy, I want you to know I had my hands full yesterday. I knew you could get back from Omaha by today, and as long as I went over everything here myself. County attorney, well, Mr. Hale, tell just what happened when you came here yesterday morning. Hale, Harry and I had started to town with a load of potatoes. We came along the road from my place, and as I got here I said, I'm going to see if I can't get John Wright to go in with me on a party telephone. I spoke to Wright about it once before and he put me off, saying folks talked too much anyway, and all he asked was peace and quiet. I guess you know about how much he talked himself. But I thought maybe if I went to the house and talked about it before his wife, though I said to Harry that I didn't know as what his wife wanted made much difference to John. County attorney, let's talk about that later, Mr. Hale. I do want to talk about that, but tell now just what happened when you got to the house. Hale, I didn't hear or see anything. I knocked at the door, and still it was all quiet inside. I knew they must be up, it was past 8 o'clock. So I knocked again, and I thought I heard somebody say, come in. I wasn't sure, I'm not sure yet, but I opened the door, this door, indicating the door by which the two women are still standing, and there in that rocker, pointing to it, sat Mrs. Wright. They all look at the rocker. County attorney, what was she doing? Hale, she was rockin' back and forth. She had her apron in her hand and was kind of pleating it. County attorney, and how did she look? Hale, well, she looked queer. County attorney, how do you mean queer? Hale, well, as if she didn't know what she was going to do next. And kind of done up. County attorney, how did she seem to feel about your coming? Hale, why, I don't think she minded one way or other. She didn't pay much attention. I said, how do, Mrs. Wright, it's cold, ain't it? And she said, is it, and went on kind of pleading at her apron. Well, I was surprised. She didn't ask me to come up to the stove or to set down, but just sat there, not even looking at me, so I said, I want to see John. And then she laughed. I guess you would call it a laugh. Thought of Harry and the team outside, so I said a little sharp, can't I see John? No, she says, kind o' dull-like. Ain't he home, says I. Yes, says she, he's home. Then why can't I see him? I asked her, out of patience. 'Cause he's dead, says she. Dead, says I. She just nodded her head, not getting a bit excited, but rockin' back and forth. Why, where is he? Says I, not knowing what to say. She just pointed upstairs like that, himself pointing to the room above. I got up, with the idea of going up there. I walked from there to here then, I says, why, what did he die of? He died of a rope round his neck, says she, and just went on pleatin' at her apron. Well, I went out and called Harry. I thought I might need help. We went upstairs, and there he was lyin'. County attorney, I think I'd rather have you go into that upstairs, where you can point it all out. Just go on now with the rest of the story. Hale, well, my first thought was to get that rope off. It looked. Stops, his face twitches. But Harry, he went up to him and he said, no, he's dead all right, and we'd better not touch anything. So we went back downstairs. She was still sitting that same way. Has anybody been notified? I asked. No, says she unconcerned. Who did this, Mrs. Wright? Said Harry. He said it businesslike and she stopped pleatin' of her apron. I don't know, she says. You don't know, says Harry. No, says she. Weren't you sleepin' in the bed with him? Says Harry. Yes, says she, but I was on the inside. Somebody slipped a rope round his neck and strangled him and you didn't wake up, says Harry. I didn't wake up, she said after him. We must 'a' looked as if we didn't see how that could be, for after a minute she said, I sleep sound. Harry was going to ask her more questions, but I said maybe we ought to let her tell her story first to the coroner, or the sheriff, so Harry went fast as he could to Rivers Place, where there's a telephone. County attorney, and what did Mrs. Wright do when she knew that you had gone for the coroner? Hale, she moved from that chair to this one over here, pointing to a small chair in the corner, and just sat there with her hands held together and looking down. I got a feeling that I ought to make some conversation, so I said I had come in to see if John wanted to put in a telephone, and at that she started to laugh, and then she stopped and looked at me scared. The county attorney, who has had his notebook out, makes a note, I dunno, maybe it wasn't scared. I wouldn't like to say it was. Soon Harry got back, and then Dr. Lloyd came, and you, Mr. Peters, and so I guess that's all I know that you don't. County attorney, looking around, I guess we'll go upstairs first and then out to the barn and around there. To the sheriff, you're convinced that there was nothing important here, nothing that would point to any motive. Sheriff, nothing here but kitchen things. The county attorney, after again looking around the kitchen, opens the door of a cupboard closet. He gets up on a chair and looks on a shelf. Pulls his hand away, sticky. County attorney, here's a nice mess. The women draw nearer. Mrs. Peters, to the other woman, oh, her fruit, it did freeze. To the lawyer, she worried about that when it turned so cold. She said the fire'd go out and her jars would break. Sheriff, well, can you beat the women? Held for murder and worryin' about her preserves. County attorney, I guess before we're through she may have something more serious than preserves to worry about. Hale, well, women are used to worrying over trifles. The two women move a little closer together. County attorney, with the gallantry of a young politician, and yet, for all their worries, what would we do without the ladies? The women do not unbend. He goes to the sink, takes a dipperful of water from the pail, and pouring it into a basin, washes his hands. Starts to wipe them on the roller towel, turns it for a cleaner place, dirty towels. Kicks his foot against the pans under the sink. Not much of a housekeeper, would you say, ladies? Mrs. Hale, stiffly, there's a great deal of work to be done on a farm. County attorney, to be sure. And yet, with a little bow to her, I know there are some Dixon County farmhouses which do not have such roller towels. He gives it a pull to expose its length again. Mrs. Hale, those towels get dirty awful quick. Men's hands aren't always as clean as they might be. County attorney, ah, loyal to your sex, I see. But you and Mrs. Wright were neighbors. I suppose you were friends, too. Mrs. Hale, shaking her head, I've not seen much of her of late years. I've not been in this house it's more than a year. County attorney, and why was that? You didn't like her. Mrs. Hale, I liked her all well enough. Farmers' wives have their hands full, Mr. Henderson. And then, county attorney, yes. Mrs. Hale, looking about, it never seemed a very cheerful place. County attorney, no, it's not cheerful. I shouldn't say she had the homemaking instinct. Mrs. Hale, well, I don't know as Wright had either. County attorney, you mean that they didn't get on very well. Mrs. Hale, no, I don't mean anything. But I don't think a place to be any cheerfuller for John Wright's being in it. County attorney, I'd like to talk more of that a little later. I want to get the lay of things upstairs now. He goes to the left, where 3 steps lead to a stair door. Sheriff, I suppose anything Mrs. Peters does'll be all right. She was to take in some clothes for her, you know, and a few little things. We left in such a hurry yesterday. County Attorney. Yes, but I would like to see what you take, Mrs. Peters, and keep an eye out for anything that might be of use to us. Mrs. Peters. Yes, Mr. Henderson. The women listen to the men's steps on the stairs, then look about the kitchen. Mrs. Hale, I'd hate to have men coming into my kitchen, snooping around and criticizing. She arranges the pans under sink, which the lawyer had shoved out of place. Mrs. Peters, of course it's no more than their duty. Mrs. Hale, duty's all right, but I guess that deputy sheriff that came out to make the fire might have got a little of this on. Gives the roller towel a pull, wish I'd thought of that sooner. Seems mean to talk about her for not having things slicked up when she had to come away in such a hurry. Mrs. Peters, who has gone to a small table in the left rear corner of the room and lifted one end of a towel that covers a pan. She had bread set. Stand still. Mrs. Hale, eyes fixed on a loaf of bread beside the bread box, which is on a low shelf at the other side of the room. Moves slowly toward it. She was going to put this in there. Picks up loaf, then abruptly drops it. In a manner of returning to familiar things, it's a shame about her fruit. I wonder if it's all gone. Gets up on the chair and looks. I think there's some here that's all right, Mrs. Peters. Yes, here, holding it toward the window. This is cherries, too. Looking again, I declare I believe that's the only one. Gets down, bottle in her hand. Goes to the sink and wipes it off on the outside. She'll feel awful bad after all her hard work in the hot weather. I remember the afternoon I put up my cherries last summer. She puts the bottle on the big kitchen table, center of the room. With a sigh, is about to sit down in the rocking chair. Before she is seated, realizes what chair it is. With a slow look at it, steps back. The chair which she has touched rocks back and forth. Mrs. Peters. Well, I must get those things from the front room closet. She goes to the door at the right, but after looking into the other room, steps back. You coming with me, Mrs. Hale? You could help me carry them. They go in the other room. Reappear, Mrs. Peters carrying a dress and skirt, Mrs. Hale following with a pair of shoes. Mrs. Peters. My, it's cold in there. She puts the clothes on the big table and hurries to the stove. Mrs. Hale, examining the skirt, right was close. I think maybe that's why she kept so much to herself. She didn't even belong to the ladies' aid. I suppose she felt she couldn't do her part, and then you don't enjoy things when you feel shabby. She used to wear pretty clothes and be lively when she was Minnie Foster, one of the town girls singing in the choir. But that was 30 years ago. This all you was to take in. Mrs. Peters, she said she wanted an apron. Funny thing to want, for there isn't much to get you dirty in jail, goodness knows. But I suppose just to make her feel more natural. She said they was in the top drawer in this cupboard. Yes, here. And then her little shawl that always hung behind the door. Opens stair door and looks, yes, here it is. Quickly shuts door leading upstairs. Mrs. Hale, abruptly moving toward her, Mrs. Peters. Mrs. Peters. Yes, Mrs. Hale. Mrs. Hale, do you think she did it? Mrs. Peters, in a frightened voice, oh, I don't know. Mrs. Hale, well, I don't think she did. Asking for an apron and her little shawl. Worrying about her fruit. Mrs. Peters starts to speak, glances up where footsteps are heard in the room above. In a low voice, Mr. Peters says it looks bad for her. Mr. Henderson is awful sarcastic in a speech, and he'll make fun of her saying, she didn't wake up. Mrs. Hale, well, I guess John Wright didn't wake when they was slipping that rope under his neck. Mrs. Peters, no, it's strange. It must have been done awful crafty and still. They say it was such a funny way to kill a man, rigging it all up like that. Mrs. Hale, that's just what Mr. Hale said. There was a gun in the house. He says that's what he can't understand. Mrs. Peters, Mr. Henderson said coming out that what was needed for the case was a motive, something to show anger or sudden feeling. Mrs. Hale, Who is standing by the table? Well, I don't see any signs of anger around here. She puts her hand on the dish towel which lies on the table, stands looking down at table, one half of which is clean, the other half messy, it's wiped to here. Makes a move as if to finish work, then turns and looks at loaf of bread outside the bread box. Drops towel. In that voice of coming back to familiar things. Wonder how they are finding things upstairs. I hope she had it a little more read up there. You know, it seems kind of sneaking. Locking her up in town, and then coming out here and trying to get her own house to turn against her. Mrs. Peters, but Mrs. Hale, the law is the law. Mrs. Hale, I suppose, tease, unbuttoning her coat, better loosen up your things, Mrs. Peters. You won't feel them when you go out. Mrs. Peters takes off her fur tippet, goes to hang it on hook at back of room, stands looking at the under part of the small corner table. Mrs. Peters, she was piecing a quilt. She brings the large sewing basket, and they look at the bright pieces. Mrs. Hale, it's log cabin pattern. Pretty, isn't it? I wonder if she was going to quilt it or just knot it. Footsteps have been heard coming down the stairs. The sheriff enters followed by Hale and the county attorney. Sheriff, they wonder if she was going to quilt it or just knot it. The men laugh, the women look abashed. County attorney, rubbing his hands over the stove, Frank's fire didn't do much up there, did it? Well, let's go out to the barn and get that cleared up. The men go outside. Mrs. Hale, resentfully, I don't know as there's anything so strange. Our talkin', up our time with little things while we're waiting for them to get the evidence. She sits down at the big table, smoothing out a block with decision. I don't see as it's anything to laugh about. Mrs. Peters, apologetically, of course they've got awful important things on their minds. Pulls up a chair and joins Mrs. Hale at the table. Mrs. Hale, examining another block, Mrs. Peters, look at this one. Here, this is the one she was working on, and look at the sewing. All the rest of it has been so nice and even. And look at this. It's all over the place. Why, it looks as if she didn't know what she was about. After she has said this, they look at each other, then start to glance back at the door. After an instant, Mrs. Hale has pulled at a knot and ripped the sewing. Mrs. Peters, oh, what are you doing, Mrs. Hale? Mrs. Hale, mildly, just pulling out a stitch or two that's not sewed very good. Threading a needle, bad sewing always made me fidgety. Mrs. Peters, nervously, I don't think we ought to touch things. Mrs. Hale, I'll just finish up this end. Suddenly stopping and leaning forward, Mrs. Peters. Mrs. Peters, yes, Mrs. Hale. Mrs. Hale, what do you suppose she was so nervous about? Mrs. Peters, oh, I don't know. I don't know as she was nervous. Sometimes so awful queer when I'm just tired. Mrs. Hale starts to say something, looks at Mrs. Peters, then goes on sewing. Well, I must get these things wrapped up. They may be through sooner than we think. Putting apron and other things together. I wonder where I can find a piece of paper and string. Mrs. Hale, in that cupboard maybe. Mrs. Peters, looking in cupboard, why, here's a bird cage. Holds it up, did she have a bird, Mrs. Hale? Mrs. Hale, why, I don't know whether she did or not, I've not been here for so long. There was a man around last year selling canaries cheap, but I don't know as she took one, maybe she did. She used to sing real pretty herself. Mrs. Peters, glancing around, seems funny to think of a bird here. But she must have had one, or why would she have a cage? I wonder what happened to it. Mrs. Hale, I suppose maybe the cat got it. Mrs. Peters, no, she didn't have a cat. She's got that feeling some people have about cats being afraid of them. My cat got in her room, and she was real upset and asked me to take it out. Mrs. Hale, my sister Bessie was like that. Queer, ain't it? Mrs. Peters, examining the cage, why, look at this door. It's broke. One hinge is pulled apart. Mrs. Hale, looking too, looks as if someone must have been rough with it. Mrs. Peters, why, yes. She brings the cage forward and puts it on the table. Mrs. Hale, I wish if they're going to find any evidence they'd be about it. I don't like this place. Mrs. Peters, but I'm awful glad you came with me, Mrs. Hale. It would be lonesome for me sitting here alone. Mrs. Hale, it would, wouldn't it? dropping her sewing, but I tell you what I do wish, Mrs. Peters. I wish I had come over sometimes when she was here. I, looking around the room, wish I had. Mrs. Peters, but of course you were awful busy, Mrs. Hale, your house and your children. Mrs. Hale, I could have come. I stayed away because it weren't cheerful and that's why I ought to have come. I've never liked this place. Maybe because it's down in a hollow and you don't see the road. I dunno what it is, but it's a lonesome place and always was. I wish I had come over to see Minnie Foster sometimes. I can see now, shakes her head. Mrs. Peters, well, you mustn't reproach yourself, Mrs. Hale. Somehow we just don't see how it is with other folks until something comes up. Mrs. Hale, not having children makes less work, but it makes a quiet house, and right out to work all day, and no company when he did come in. Did you know John Wright, Mrs. Peters? Mrs. Peters, not to know him, I've seen him in town. They say he was a good man. Mrs. Hale, yes, good. He didn't drink and kept his word as well as most, I guess, and paid his debts. But he was a hard man, Mrs. Peters. Just to pass the time of day with him, shivers like a raw wind that gets to the bone, pauses, her eye falling on the cage, I should think she would have wanted a bird. But what do you suppose went with it? Mrs. Peters, I don't know unless it got sick and died. She reaches over and swings the broken door, swings it again, both women watch it. Mrs. Hale, you weren't raised round here, were you? Mrs. Peters shakes her head, you didn't know her. Mrs. Peters, not till they brought her yesterday. Mrs. Hale, she come to think of it, she was kind of like a bird herself, real sweet and pretty, but kind of timid and fluttery. How she did chain. Silence, then as if struck by a happy thought and relieved to get back to everyday things, tell you what, Mrs. Peters, why don't you take the quilt in with you? It might take up her mind. Mrs. Peters, why, I think that's a real nice idea, Mrs. Hale. There couldn't possibly be any objection to it, could there? Now, just what would I take? I wonder if her patches are in here and her things. They look in the sewing basket. Mrs. Hale, here's some red. I expect this has got sewing things in it. Brings out a fancy box, what a pretty box. Looks like something somebody would give you. Maybe her scissors are in here. Opens box. Suddenly puts her hand to her nose. Why, Mrs. Peters bends nearer, then turns her face away. There's something wrapped up in this piece of silk. Mrs. Peters, why, this isn't her scissors. Mrs. Hale, lifting the silk, oh, Mrs. Peters, it's. Mrs. Peters bends closer. Mrs. Peters, it's the bird. Mrs. Hale, jumping up, but Mrs. Peters, look at it. Its neck. Look at its neck. It's all other side too. Mrs. Peters, somebody wrung its neck. Their eyes meet. A look of growing comprehension, of horror. Steps are heard outside. Mrs. Hale slips box under quilt pieces and sinks into her chair. Enter sheriff and county attorney. Mrs. Peters rises. County attorney. As one turning from serious things to little pleasantries, well, ladies, have you decided whether she was going to quilt it or not it? Mrs. Peters, we think she was going to knot it. County attorney, well, that's interesting, I'm sure. Seeing the birdcage, has the bird flown? Mrs. Hale, putting more quilt pieces over the box, we think the cat got it. County attorney, preoccupied, is there a cat? Mrs. Hale glances in a quick covert way at Mrs. Peters. Mrs. Peters, well, not now. They're superstitious, you know. They leave. County attorney, to Sheriff Peters, continuing an interrupted conversation, no sign at all of anyone having come from the outside. Their own rope. Now let's go up again and go over it piece by piece. They start upstairs. It would have to have been someone who knew just the. Mrs. Peters sits down. The two women sit there not looking at one another, but as if peering into something and at the same time holding back. When they talk now, it is in the manner of feeling their way over strange ground, as if afraid of what they are saying, but as if they cannot help saying it. Mrs. Hale, she liked the bird. She was going to bury it in that pretty box. Mrs. Peters, in a whisper, when I was a girl my kitten there was a boy took a hatchet, and before my eyes end before I could get there, covers her face an instant. If they hadn't held me back, I would have, catches herself, looks upstairs where steps are heard, falters weakly, heard him. Mrs. Hale, with a slow look around her, I wonder how it would seem never to have had any children around. Pause, no, Wright wouldn't like the birda thing that sang. She used to sing. He killed that too. Mrs. Peters, moving uneasily, we don't know who killed the bird. Mrs. Hale, I knew John Wright. Mrs. Peters, it was an awful thing was done in this house that night, Mrs. Hale. Killing a man while he slept, slipping a rope around his neck that choked the life out of him. Mrs. Hale, his neck. Choked the life out of him. Her hand goes out and rests on the bird cage. Mrs. Peters, with rising voice, we don't know who killed him. We don't know. Mrs. Hale, her own feeling not interrupted. If there'd been years and years of nothing, then a bird to sing to you, it would be awful still, after the bird was still. Mrs. Peters, something within her speaking, I know what stillness is. When we homesteaded in Dakota, and my first baby died after he was 2 years old, and me with no other then. Mrs. Hale, moving, how soon do you suppose they'll be through, looking for the evidence? Mrs. Peters, I know what stillness is. Pulling herself back, the law has got to punish crime, Mrs. Hale. Mrs. Hale, not as if answering that, I wish you'd seen Minnie Foster when she wore a white dress with blue ribbons and stood up there in the choir and sang. A look around the room, oh, I wish I'd come over here once in a while. That was a crime. That was a crime. Who's going to punish that? Mrs. Peters, looking upstairs, we mustn't take on. Mrs. Hale, I might have known she needed help. I know how things can be for women. I tell you, it's queer, Mrs. Peters. We live close together, and we live far apart. We all go through the same things, it's all just a different kind of the same thing. Brushes her eyes, noticing the bottle of fruit, reaches out for it. If I was you, I wouldn't tell her her fruit was gone. Tell her it ain't. Tell her it's all right. Take this in to prove it to her. She may never know whether it was broke or not. Mrs. Peters takes the bottle, looks about for something to wrap it in, takes petticoat from the clothes brought from the other room, very nervously begins winding this around the bottle. In a false voice, my, it's a good thing the men couldn't hear us. Wouldn't they just laugh? Getting all stirred up over a little thing like a dead canary. As if that could have anything to do with wouldn't they laugh. The men are heard coming downstairs. Mrs. Hale, under her breath, maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. County attorney, no, Peters, it's all perfectly clear except a reason for doing it. But you know juries when it comes to women. If there was some definite thing, something to show something to make a story about a thing that would connect up with this strange way of doing it. The women's eyes meet for an instant. Enter Hale from outer door. Hale, well, I've got the team around. Pretty cold out there. County attorney, I'm going to stay here a while by myself. To the sheriff, you can send Frank out for me, can't you? I want to go over everything. I'm not satisfied that we can't do better. Sheriff, do you want to see what Mrs. Peters is going to take in? The lawyer goes to the table, picks up the apron, laughs. County attorney, oh, I guess they're not very dangerous things the ladies have picked out. Moves a few things about, disturbing the quilt pieces which cover the box. Steps back, no, Mrs. Peters doesn't need supervising. For that matter, a sheriff's wife is married to the law. Ever think of it that way, Mrs. Peters? Mrs. Peters, not just that way. Sheriff, chuckling, married to the law. Moves toward the other room, I just want you to come in here a minute, George. We ought to take a look at these windows. County attorney, scoffingly, oh, windows. Sheriff, will be right out, Mr. Hale. Hale goes outside. The sheriff follows the county attorney into the other room. Then Mrs. Hale rises, hands tight together, looking intensely at Mrs. Peters, whose eyes make a slow turn, finally meeting Mrs. Hale's. A moment Mrs. Hale holds her, then her own eyes point the way to where the box is concealed. Suddenly, Mrs. Peters throws back quilt pieces and tries to put the box in the bag she is wearing. It is too big. She opens box, starts to take bird out, cannot touch it, goes to pieces, stands there helpless. Sound of a knob turning in the other room. Mrs. Hale snatches the box and puts it in the pocket of her big coat. Enter county attorney and sheriff. County attorney. Facetiously, well, Henry, at least we found out that she was not going to quilt it. She was going to what is it you call it, ladies. Mrs. Hale, her hand against her pocket, we call it not it, Mr. Henderson. Curtain. The Outside. First performed by the Provincetown Players at the Playwrights Theatre, December 28, 1917. Captain of the bar's life-saving station. Bradford, a lifesaver. Tony, a Portuguese lifesaver. Mrs. Patrick, who lives in the abandoned station. Allie Mayo, who works for her. Scene, a room in a house which was once a life-saving station. Since ceasing to be, that it has taken on no other character, except that of a place which no one cares either to preserve or change. It is painted the life-saving gray, but has not the life-saving freshness. This is one end of what was the big boat room, and at the ceiling is seen a part of the framework from which the boat once swung. About 2/3 of the back wall is open because of the big sliding door of the type of barn door, and through this open door are seen the sand dunes and beyond them the woods. At one point the line where woods and dunes meet stands out clearly, and there are indicated the rude things, vines, bushes, which form the outer uneven rim of the woods, the only things that grow in the sand. At another point, a sandhill is menacing the woods. This old life-saving station is at a point where the sea curves, so through the open door the sea also is seen. The station is located on the outside shore of Cape Cod, at the point, near the tip of the cape, where it makes that final curve which forms the Provincetown harbor. The dunes are hills and strange forms of sand on which, in places, grows the stiff beach grass struggle, dogged growing against odds. At right of the big sliding door is a drift of sand, and the top of buried beach grass is seen on this. There is a door left, and at right of big sliding door is a slanting wall. Door in this is ajar at rise of curtain, and through this door, Bradford and Tony, lifesavers, are seen bending over a man's body, attempting to restore respiration. The captain of the lifesavers comes into view outside the big open door at left. He appears to have been hurrying, peers in, sees the men, goes quickly to them. Captain, I'll take this now, boys. Bradford, no need for anybody to take it, Capt. He was dead when we picked him up. Captain, Danny Sears was dead when we picked him up. But we brought him back. I'll go on a while. The two men who have been bending over the body rise, stretch to relax, and come into the room. Bradford, pushing back his arms and putting his hands on his chest, work, trying to put life in the dead. Captain, where'd you find him, Joe? Bradford, in front of this house. Not 40 feet out. Captain, what you bring him up here for? He speaks in an abstracted way, as if the working part of his mind is on something else, and in the muffled voice of one bending over. Bradford, with a sheepish little laugh, force of habit, I guess. We brought so many of 'em back up here. Looks around the room, and then it was kind of unfriendly down where he was the wind spittin' the sea onto you till he'd have no way of knowin' he was ashore. Tony, lucky I was not sooner or later as I walk by from my watch. Bradford, you have accommodating ways, Tony. No sooner or later. I wouldn't say it of many portages. But the sea, calling it into the captain, is friendly as a kitten alongside the women that live here. Allie Mayo there both crazy had that door open, moving his head toward the big sliding door, sweepin' out, and when we come along she backs off and stands lookin' at us, lookin' Lord, I just wanted to get him somewhere else. So I kicked this door open with my foot, jerking his hand toward the room where the captain is seen bending over the man, and got him away. Under his voice, if he did have any notion of common back to life, he wouldn't have come if he'd seen her. More genially, I wouldn't. Captain, you know who he is, Joe. Bradford, I never saw him before. Captain, Mitchell telephoned from High Head that a dory came ashore there. Bradford, last night wasn't the best night for a dory. To Tony, boastfully, not that I couldn't have stayed in one. Some men can stay in a dory, and some can't. Going to the inner door, that boy's dead, Captain, then I'm not doing him any harm. Bradford, going over and shaking the frame where the boat once swung, This the first time you ever been in this place, ain't it, Tony? Tony, I never was here before. Bradford, well, I was here before. A laugh and the old man, nodding toward the captain, he lived here for 27 years. Lord, the things that happened here. There've been dead ones carried through that door. Pointing to the outside door, Lord, the ones I've carried. I carried in Bill Collins, and Lou Harvey and S'all over now. You ain't seen no wrecks. Don't ever think you have. I was here the night the Jenny Snow was out there. Pointing to the sea, there was a wreck. We got the boat that stood here, again shaking the frame, down that bank. Goes to the door and looks out, Lord, how'd we ever do it? The sand has put his place on the blink all right. And then when it gets too godforsaken for a life-savin station, a lady takes it for a summer residence and then spends the winter. She's a cheerful one. Tony, a woman she makes things pretty. This not like a place where a woman live. On the floor there is nothing, on the wall there is nothing. Things trying to express it with his hands do not hang on other things. Bradford, imitating Tony's gesture, no things do not hang on other things. In my opinion, the woman's crazy sittin', over there on the sand. A gesture towards the dunes, what's she lookin' at? There ain't nothin' to see. And I know the woman that works for her's crazy Allie Mayo. She's a Provincetown girl. She was all right once, but Mrs. Patrick comes in from the hall at the right. She is a city woman, a sophisticated person who has been caught into something as unlike the old life as the dunes are unlike a meadow. At the moment she is excited and angry. Mrs. Patrick, you have no right here. This isn't the life-saving station anymore. Just because it used to be, I don't see why you should think this is my house. And I want my house to myself. Captain, putting his head through the door. One arm of the man he is working with is raised, and the hand reaches through the doorway. Well, I must say, lady, I would think that any house could be a life-saving station when the sea had sent a man to it. Mrs. Patrick, who has turned away so she cannot see the hand, I don't want him here. I, defiant, yet choking, I must have my house to myself. Captain, you'll get your house to yourself when I've made up my mind there's no more life in this man. A good many lives have been saved in this house. Mrs. Patrick, I believe that's your name, and if there's any chance of bringing one more back from the dead, the fact that you own the house ain't goin' to make a damn bit of difference to me. Mrs. Patrick, in a thin, wild way, I must have my house to myself. Captain, hell with such a woman. Moves the man he is working with and slams the door shut. As the captain says, and if there's any chance of bringing one more back from the dead, Allie Mayo has appeared outside the wide door which gives on to the dunes, a bleak woman, who at first seems little more than a part of the sand before which she stands. But as she listens to this conflict, one suspects in her that peculiar intensity of twisted things which grow in unfavoring places. Mrs. Patrick, I don't want them here. I must. But suddenly she retreats and is gone. Bradford, well, I couldn't say, Allie Mayo, that you work for any too kind-hearted a lady. What's the matter with the woman? Does she want folks to die? Appears to break her all up to see somebody trying to save a life. What do you work for such a fish for? A crazy fish, that's what I call the woman. I've seen her day after day settin', over there where the dunes meet the woods, just sittin' there lookin'. Suddenly thinking of it, I believe she likes to see the sand slippin' down on the woods. Pleases her to see something get buried, I guess. Allie Mayo, who has stepped inside the door and moved half across the room toward the corridor at the right, is arrested by this last stands a moment as if seeing through something, then slowly on and out. Bradford, some coffee'd taste good. But coffee in this house? Oh no. It might make somebody feel better. Opening the door that was slammed shut, want me now, Captain? Captain, no. Bradford, oh, that boy's dead, Captain. Captain, snarling Danny Sears was dead too. Shut that door. I don't want to hear that woman's voice again, ever. Closing the door and sitting on a bench built into that corner between the big sliding door and the room where the captain is. Bradford, they're a cheerful pair of women livin' in this cheerful place that lifesavers had to turn over to the sand. This Patrick woman used to be all right. She and her husband was summer folks over in town. They used to picnic over here on the outside. It was Joe Dyer he's always talkin'. To summer folks told, the government was going to build the new station and sell this one by sealed bids. I heard them talkin' about it. They was sittin' right down there on the beach eatin' their supper. They was goin' to put in a fireplace, and they was goin' to paint it bright colors, and have parties over here summer folk notions. Their bid won it who'd want it, a buried house you couldn't move. Tony, I see no bright colors. Bradford, don't you? How astonishin'. You must be color blind. And I guess we're the first party. Laughs, I was in Bill Joseph's grocery store one day last November, when in she comes Mrs. Patrick from New York. I've come to take the old life-saving station, says she. I'm going to sleep over there tonight, huh. Bill is used to queer ways he deals with summer folks, but that got him. November an empty house, a buried house, you might say, off here on the outside shoreway across the sand from man or beast. He got it out of her, not by what she said, but by the way she looked at what he said, that her husband had died, and she was runnin' off to hide herself, I guess. A person'd feel sorry for her if she weren't so standoffish, and so doggin' mean. But mean folks have got minds of their own. She slept here that night. Bill had been hauling things till after dark bed, stove, coal. And then she wanted somebody to work for her. Somebody, says she, that doesn't say an unnecessary word. Well, then Bill come to the back of the store, I said, looks to me as if Allie Mayo was the party she's lookin' for. Allie Mayo has got a prejudice against words. Or maybe she likes him so well she's savin' of him. She's not spoken unnecessary word for 20 years. She's got her reasons. Women whose men go to see ain't always talkative. The captain comes out. He closes door behind him and stands there beside it. He looks tired and disappointed. Both look at him. Pause. Captain, wonder who he was. Bradford, young. Guess he's not been much at sea. Captain, I hate to leave even the dead in this house. But we can get right back for him. A look around, the old place used to be more friendly. Moves to outer door, hesitates, hating to leave like this. Well, Joe, we brought a good many of them back here. Bradford, Danny Sears is tendin' bar in Boston now. The three men go. As they are going around the drift of sand, Allie Mayo comes in carrying a pot of coffee, sees them leaving, puts down the coffee pot, looks at the door the captain has closed, moves toward it, as if drawn. Mrs. Patrick follows her in. Mrs. Patrick, they've gone. Mrs. Mayo nods, facing the closed door. Mrs. Patrick, and they're leaving him. Again the other woman nods, then he's. Mrs. Mayo just stands there. They have no right just because it used to be their place. I want my house to myself. Snatches her coat and scarf from a hook and starts through the big door toward the dunes. Allie Mayo, wait. When she has said it, she sinks into that corner seat as if overwhelmed by what she has done. The other woman is held. Allie Mayo, to herself. If I could say that, I can say more. Looking at woman she has arrested, but speaking more to herself. That boy in there, his face uncovered something, her open hand on her chest. But she waits, as if she cannot go on. When she speaks it is in labored way slow, monotonous, as if snowed in by silent years. For 20 years, I did what you are doing. And I can tell you it's not the way. Her voice has fallen to a whisper. She stops, looking ahead at something remote and veiled. We had been married 2 years. A start, as of sudden pain. Says it again, as if to make herself say it, married 2 years. He had a chance to go north on a whaler. Time's hard. He had to go. 1.5 years it was to be. 1.5 years. 2 years we'd been married. She sits silent, moving a little back and forth. The day he went away. Not spoken, but breathed from pain the days after he was gone. I heard it first. Last letter said farther north, not another chance to write, till on the way home. Oh wait. 6 months. Another, I did not hear. Long wait, nobody ever heard. After it seems she is held there, and will not go on, I used to talk as much as any girl in Provincetown. Jim used to tease me about my talking. But they'd come in to talk to me. They'd say you may hear yet. They'd talk about what must have happened. And one day, a woman who'd been my friend all my life said suppose he was to walk in. I got up and drove her from my kitchen, and from that time, till this I've not said a word I didn't have to say. She has become almost wild in telling this. That passes. In a whisper, the ice that caught Jim caught me. A moment as if held in ice. Comes from it. To Mrs. Patrick simply, it's not the way. A sudden change. You're not the only woman in the world whose husband is dead. Mrs. Patrick, with a cry of the hurt, dead. My husband's not dead. Allemayo, he's not, slowly understands. Oh. The woman in the door is crying. Suddenly picks up her coat, which has fallen to the floor, and steps outside. Allemayo, almost failing to do it. Wait. Mrs. Patrick, wait. Don't you think you've said enough? They told me you didn't say an unnecessary word. Allemayo, I don't. Mrs. Patrick, and you can see, I should think, that you've bungled into things you know nothing about. As she speaks, and crying under her breath, she pushes the sand by the door down on the half-buried grass, though not as if knowing what she is doing. Allemayo, slowly, when you keep still for 20 years you know things you didn't know you knew. I know why you're doing that. She looks up at her, startled. Don't bury the only thing that will grow. Let it grow. The woman outside, still crying under her breath, turns abruptly and starts toward the line where dunes and woods meet. Allemayo, I know where you're going. Mrs. Patrick turns, but not as if she wants to. What you'll try to do. Over there. Pointing to the line of woods, bury it. The life in you. Bury it, watching the sand bury the woods. But I'll tell you something. They fight too. The woods. They fight for life, the way that Captain fought for life in there. Pointing to the closed door. Mrs. Patrick, with a strange exultation, and lose the way he lost in there. Allemayo, sure somber they don't lose. Mrs. Patrick, don't lose. Triumphant, I have walked on the tops of buried trees. Allemayo, slow, somber, yet large, and vines will grow over the sand that covers the trees and hold it. And other trees will grow over the buried trees. Mrs. Patrick, I've watched the sand slip down on the vines that reach out farthest. Allemayo, another vine will reach that spot. Under her breath, tenderly, strange little things that reach out farthest. Mrs. Patrick, and will be buried soonest. Allemayo, and hold the sand for things behind them. They save a wood that guards a town. Mrs. Patrick, I care nothing about a wood to guard a town. This is the outside these dunes where only beach grass grows, this outer shore where men can't live. The outside. You who were born here and who die here have named it that. Allemayo, yes, we named it that, and we had reason. He died here, reaches her hand toward the closed door, and many a one before him. But many another reached the harbor. Slowly raises her arm, bends it to make the form of the cape. Touches the outside of her bent arm, the outside. But an arm that bends to make a harbor where men are safe. Mrs. Patrick, I'm outside the harbor on the dunes, land not life. Allemayo, dunes meet woods and woods hold dunes from a town that's shore to a harbor. Mrs. Patrick, this is the outside. Sand, picking some of it up in her hand, and letting it fall on the beach grass. Sand that covers hills of sand that move and cover. Allemayo, woods. Woods to hold the moving hills from Provincetown. Provincetown where they turn when boats can't live at sea. Did you ever see the sails come round here when the sky is dark? A line of them swift to the harbor where their children live. Go back. Pointing back to your edge of the woods, that's the edge of the dunes. Mrs. Patrick, the edge of life. Where life trails off to dwarfed things not worth a name. Suddenly sits down in the doorway. Allemayo, not worth a name. And meeting the outside. Big with the sense of the wonder of life. Mrs. Patrick, lifting sand and letting it drift through her hand. They're what the sand will let them be. They take strange shapes like shapes of blown sand. Allemayo, meeting the outside. Moving nearer, speaking more personally, I know why you came here. To this house that had been given up, on this shore where only savers of life try to live. I know what holds you on these dunes and draws you over there. But other things are true beside the things you want to see. Mrs. Patrick, how do you know they are? Where have you been for 20 years? Mayo, outside. 20 years. That's why I know how brave they are, indicating the edge of the woods. Suddenly different, you'll not find peace there again. Go back and watch them fight. Mrs. Patrick, swiftly rising, you're a cruel woman, a hard, insolent woman. I knew what I was doing. What do you know about it? About me? I didn't go to the outside. I was left there. I'm only trying to get along. Everything that can hurt me, I want buried deep. Spring is here. This morning I knew it. Spring coming through the storm to take me to hurt me. That's why I couldn't bear. She looks at the closed door, things that made me know I feel. You haven't felt for so long, you don't know what it means. But I tell you, spring is here. And now you take that from me, looking now toward the edge of the woods. The thing that made me know they would be buried in my heart, those things I can't live and know I feel. You're more cruel than the sea. But other things are true beside the things you want to see, outside. Springs will come when I will not know that it is spring. As if resentful of not more deeply believing what she says, what would there be for me but the outside? What was there for you? What did you ever find after you lost the thing you wanted? Mayo, I found what I find now I know. The edge of life to hold life behind me. A slight gesture toward Mrs. Patrick. Mrs. Patrick, stepping back, you call what your life. Laughs, bleak as those ugly things that grow in the sand. Mayo, under her breath, as one who speaks tenderly of beauty, ugly. Mrs. Patrick, passionately, I have known life. I have known life. You're like this cape. A line of land way out to sea, land, not life. Mayo, a harbor far at sea. Raises her arm, curves it in as if around something she loves, land that encloses and gives shelter from storm. Mrs. Patrick, facing the sea, as if affirming what will hold all else outside sea. Outer shore. Dunes, land, not life. Mayo, outside sea, outer shore, dark with the wood that once was ship's dunes, strange land, not life, woods, town, and harbor. The line. Stunted, straggly line that meets the outside face to face and fights for what itself can never be. Lonely line. Brave growing. Mrs. Patrick, it loses. Mayo, it wins. Mrs. Patrick, the farthest life is buried. Mayo, and life grows over buried life. Lifted into that, then, as one who states a simple truth with feeling, it will. And springs will come when you will want to know that it is spring. The captain and Bradford appear behind the drift of sand. They have a stretcher. To get away from them, Mrs. Patrick steps farther into the room. Mayo shrinks into her corner. The men come in, open the closed door, and go in the room where they left the dead man. A moment later, they are seen outside the big open door, bearing the man away. Mrs. Patrick watches them from sight. Mrs. Patrick, bitter, exultant, savors of life. To Mayo, you savors of life. Meeting the outside. Meeting, but she cannot say it mockingly again. In saying it, something of what it means has broken through, rises. Herself lost, feeling her way into the wonder of life meeting the outside. It grows in her as curtain lowers slowly.